Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about the TIES product planning model and how to tie your product goals with design and engineering implementation. As I mentioned, my name is Ryan, and a little bit about me. I am a senior product manager at the Washington Post, focused on our media and subscriptions products. I like to approach everything with a growth mindset. So that just means I believe I can get better at anything by dedicating time, effort, and energy, and also getting feedback from others. So if you have any feedback, please drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. So as a product manager, I always like to start with the user story. And the story here today is, as a product manager, I need a better way to connect my strategic goals to the nitty-gritty implementation of my team's workflows, so I can ensure that the daily tasks that we're chipping away at every day are driving us forward towards achieving the broader goals of the organization. So in my role at the Post, I'm constantly traversing two levels of planning out the strategic vision for my team, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months out, and also working directly with the engineering core on the daily tasks or what we're going to do in the next sprint. And in that constant back and forth, I found a problem, and it's this gap right between, a 3-month product plan or your quarterly goals, and then what your team is doing in your agile sprints, 1 to 2 week increments of work. And the biggest problem I have is in this gap, right, where there's 2 to 4 week stages of development. And I like to call these the phase goals. And these are the most difficult to communicate to my stakeholder groups or to my team as to where we are in the process and what we need to be prioritizing to get to those larger organizational goals. So today, I'm going to be talking about the TIES product planning model. This was inspired by an article that I found from Atlassian that lays out this chart you see here on the right. It's the themes, initiatives, epics, and stories, spelling out TIES. So what you see are themes that are the objectives from the organization that guide prioritization, initiatives underneath those that are projects with measurable goals, epics, which are the phases of work with target delivery dates. This is really where that gap lies. And then stories, which you're probably all familiar with. These are tasks written from the perspective of the user that your engineering and design team will pick up and solve in your sprints. So today we're going to talk about 3 steps to driving from those organizational goals all the way through to your team's agile roadmap. And right in the middle, you'll see the TIES table, which is the glue connecting those 2 disparate plans and making sure that you're lining up the right goals for your team and working to make sure that you're really achieving the outcomes for your users. The takeaway that I want you to get from today's discussion is a 1-page product plan that has the full view of those objectives and key results, which represent the larger goals of your organization and your team. This TIES table, which brings out those goals into an actionable plan with target delivery dates. And then finally, a live roadmap of what your team is working on in the moment so that you can give updates as to how you are progressing towards your goals. So let's pretend. Let's go through a little exercise. Imagine you're a product manager for a company called Turntable.fm, a website that lets users DJ and enjoy music in live virtual rooms. Now, some of you may be familiar with Turntable. It was a product back in the earlier ages of the internet that allowed users to join together in virtual rooms, share music, and chat in real time. It's since deprecated out of existence, but for the purposes of today's exercise, we're going to pretend that we're in 2020 building a modern mobile-first version of Turntable. That's the company's mission at this point. Awesome. So let's go on a journey, starting with objectives and key results. So I like to think of objectives as a vaccine for fuzzy thinking. This helps you start to organize your thoughts and set the higher level goals for your team. So you can think of this as the what. Objectives should be significant, concrete, action-oriented, and inspirational. So you've written 3 objectives for Q3 at Turntable that are rebuilding in a modern mobile tech stack, empowering more users to become DJs, and expediting music room discovery to drive engagement. Now that you have these higher level goals, you can start breaking the what into the how, which are your key results. Key results are specific and time-bound, aggressive yet realistic, and measurable and verifiable. So things that we can reflect back on and evaluate whether we reached our goals or not. So within each objective, it's great to set about 3 strong key results. One thing to call out about for key results is there's 2 different types. There are input KRs, which are the specific task or activity that need to be done to reach your objective. And then output KRs, which are the outcomes your team has identified as benchmarks that you want to drive forward. So an example input KR would be launching an MVP of new room discovery. So there's a new experience you're trying to deploy by September 14th. And then for an output KR, it's taking a benchmark measurement, like, for example, the average time to discover a room in July is 10 seconds, and we want to reduce that time to discover by 30 seconds or by 3 seconds in total. So in September, we'd like to get it down to 7 seconds. This distinction will become important as we start laying out our ties table, which is why I call it out now. If you'd like to learn more about OKRs, I highly recommend a TED Talk by John Doerr. He goes through exactly what OKRs are, and the related material that he shares online is a lot of what inspired the last few slides that you've seen. So now that we've laid out our objectives and key results and have this vision for Q3 at Turntable, we're going to take that and transform it into an actionable plan through the ties table. The ties table format consists of 5 parts: a sprint cadence, your themes, initiatives, epics, and dates. We're going to walk through each one of these. So a sprint cadence is the dates when the team is expected to complete their tasks and ship changes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. This is the agile process. At the Post, we do 2-week sprints, but here, for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to do 1-week sprints starting on every Monday in Q3 of 2020. Now, these are really great. These are the anchors when we expect to reach each phase of work. Okay, great. Now, we're going to take those objectives that we set in our OKRs and translate them into this first column of the ties table, the themes. So this is really just transferring from those objectives directly into the themes, and we start to lay out our table here, making it easy for us to see how those themes break down into each part. Next up, we're going to do our initiatives. So similarly to our objectives, we're going to take our input KRs. Remember, input KRs are related to certain tasks or activities that we expect to deliver, and we're going to pipe them directly into the second column underneath each theme. So for example, under the Modernize Turntable Code theme, we have 3 initiatives: create a React front end, build a Node backend, and integrate with Sign in with Google for authentication. Next up, we have our epics. So within each initiative, we're going to break those bodies of work into phases of development. So for a software development process, it typically looks something like a research phase, a design phase, a build phase, and a test and launch phase. And this really helps us start to chunk out what we need to accomplish to create and deliver on our input KRs. And now that we have those phases laid out, we can work backwards from our key result deadlines that we set in the beginning and chunk out each phase of work into dates when we expect to deliver each phase. So for example, in the Sign in with Google initiative, if we want to launch account creation by August 3rd, we better be done with the development work by July 27th so that we have enough time to QA and properly test and get everything out the door. And if we're going to be done with development by July 27th, we need to have our designs done by July 13th to give us 2 solid weeks of build time to make sure that everything works and is complying with the designs that our design team has created. And you can see how working backwards through each phase of development allows us to see exactly what we need to be doing and the timeframes in which we allocate so that we can ensure that our team isn't over-indexed in any one area at any point in time. So there you go. We have a beautiful ties table laid out, chunking out each phase of work within our initiatives and themes with clear delivery dates so everyone's on the same page as to what we're working towards. So now that we have that all compiled, it's now time to bring that vision into an actionable roadmap for your team. Now, today I'm going to show you how to do this with Jira and Confluence, which is what I've been showing in the previous slides. But this can really be applied to any software development process. So feel free to adapt this to whatever works best for you and your team. So for connecting your roadmap, there are 6 parts that I'm going to walk you through to make sure that you have all the pieces lined up to build out that full 1-page product plan. The first thing is configuring your project. In this case, I'm going to be using Jira. Transferring your initiatives from your ties table into your Jira project. Transferring the epics. Then linking the epics and initiatives. Creating user stories. And embedding your roadmap to, again, get that full view of what your team's working on. I will just quickly mention that the example you're seeing is a next-gen Jira project, which has a few unique values like a roadmap view that I really like, but you can really, again, adapt this to whatever workflow your team is using. So the first thing that I did to create this roadmap was write out an initiative ticket type. And this isn't a standard issue in Jira, but it's really helpful for being able to collect your epics to one singular item so you can see how you're progressing towards your goal. In addition, setting up this parent-child linking is the second piece to being able to connect your epic back to your initiatives and make sure you have that connection so you can represent that clearly to your team. For this next part, this is really simple. It's taking that second column of initiatives in your ties table and bringing them into your Jira project or your software development project and setting out clear delivery dates for each of those each of those initiatives to make sure that everyone in your project is clear as to what you're working towards and when. Then you can take the third column, your epics, and bring those in as well. And one thing that I like to call out here is I like to use color as a way to indicate which epics belong to which initiative, so that when you get to the roadmap view, it's really easy to see how those are all leading back to your initiative goals. So in the ties table, I color code that little asterisk blue so that when I bring those epics for this initiative into Jira, I can also color code those blue. So when we see our roadmap, it'll make a ton more sense. Great. So remember that issue linking type that we created earlier? This is where you leverage it to connect your epics back to those initiative items. So this is great because at any point in time when someone asks, how are we doing with our integration with YouTube? You can come into your initiative ticket and say, we've completed our research and design phase, and we're currently in the build phase of this work, and we're still on track to deliver this new feature by August 3rd. So this is a really easy way for you to be able to report on how your team is doing, and also for your team to continuously measure how we're progressing towards those larger goals. Awesome. So this is a view that I really like. This is the roadmap view in the next gen Jira projects. And this is where you can really tie together the stories back together with your epics and initiatives. So what you're seeing here on the left is all the epics laid out and color-coded by the initiatives that you've laid out in your ties table. You can see within each epic, you have your stories, very custom of your project and whatever your team's working on. And in this roadmap view, you can look at how your team is progressing over time. So with this example that we have open, create an app with React hooks to support modular component use. There were 3 stories that we wrote, and they all got completed within the sprint we allocated for this epic. And so you can look back into one of your epic issues and see exactly how your team is doing and what initiative this epic was a part of, and if you're completing your KRs or key results on time. So again, you get this full view of how your team is progressing, and it's all connected and dynamic. So this is that last piece. It's taking that roadmap that you've laid out in your Jira project and using this Jira roadmap macro in Confluence, if you are using Confluence in Jira, to embed your roadmap into your plan. I linked the documentation here if you're interested, and the end result is this one-page ties plan. It's got those objectives and key results at the top. It's got a beautifully laid out ties table that sequences out each phase of work and has clear delivery dates. And again, at the bottom, we have our embedded roadmap showing exactly where we are in our team's process, how we're progressing towards our goals. And it's just very clear and transparent for stakeholders, designers, engineers, and even the marketing team to see how we're delivering towards the goals we set out for Q3 or any time frame that you work within with your team. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about the ties product planning model. If you have any questions or would like to connect, please shoot me an email at my email right here, ryan@ryanlu.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your feedback and how you're applying the ties model in your workflow.